This first picture is shown on page 27 of the photographs in Exhibit 1061 PS. It's entitled Destruction of a Block of Buildings. The court will recall those portions of the teletype messages that referred to the setting of fires for the purpose of driving out the Jews. This picture, taken from the record, portrays such a scene. This picture is from page 21 of the photographs contained in the exhibit. And the caption is, "Smoking Out of the Jews and Bandits." Excerpts from the teletype messages read in the record relate to the use of smoke as a means of forcing the Jews out of the hiding places. This picture is from page 36 of the photographs in the exhibit and is called Fighting a Nest of Resistance. It is obviously a picture of an explosive blast being used to destroy one of the buildings. And the court may recall that message of 7 May 1943 that related to the blowing up of buildings as a lengthy process and requiring an enormous amount of explosives. The same message reported that the best method for destroying the Jews was the setting of fires. This picture is taken from page 36 of the photographs. And the court's attention is invited to the figure of a man in midair who appears in the picture about halfway between the center and the upper right-hand corner. He has jumped from one of the upper floors of the burning building. And a close examination of this picture by the court in the original photograph will disclose other figures in the upper floor windows who apparently are about to follow him. The teletype message of 22 April reported that entire families jumped from burning buildings and were liquidated at once. This picture is from the 39th page of the photographs. It is entitled, "The Leader of the Large-Scale Action." The Nazi-appointed commander of this action was SS Major General Stroop, who probably is the central figure in this picture. I cannot refrain from commenting on this picture at this point upon the smiling faces of the group shown there in the midst of the violence and destruction.
Are you passing from that document now?
Yes, sir.
Well, will you tell the tribunal where the document was found?
Where the document itself was found, sir?
Found, yes.
It is a captured document, sir, and the history I have not got, but I shall be very pleased to submit the background and history to the court the beginning of the afternoon session, sir.
Well, the tribunal, I think, would like to know where it was found and to whom it was submitted.
I have that. I believe, sir, that that is contained in the document. The teletype messages, sir, that are contained in this exhibit were all addressed to the higher SS and Policeführer East, SS Obergruppenführer and General of the Police Kruger, or his deputy. It was not always necessary, or perhaps desirable, to first place the Jews within the ghettos to effect the elimination. In the Baltic states, a more direct course of action was followed. I refer to document now in evidence, L180, which is U.S. Exhibit number 276. This is a report by SS Brigade Führer Stahlecker to Himmler, dated 15 October 1941, entitled Action Group A, found in Himmler's private files. He reported that 135,567 persons, nearly all Jews, were murdered in accordance to basic orders directing the complete annihilation of the Jews. This voluminous document provides me with the following statement by the SS Brigade Führer. And on translation, bottom of page 6, the second sentence of the last paragraph I read, "To our surprise, it was not easy at first to set in motion an extensive pogrom against Jews. Clematis, the leader of the partisan unit mentioned above, who was used for this purpose primarily, succeeded in starting a pogrom on the basis of advice given to him by a small advanced detachment acting in Kovno, and in such a way that no German order or German instigation was noticed from the outside. During the first pogrom, in the night from 25 to 26 June, the Lithuanian partisans did away with more than 1,500 Jews, setting fire to several synagogues or destroying them by other means, and burned down a Jewish dwelling district consisting of about 60 houses. During the following nights, about 2,300 Jews were made harmless in a similar way." And from the last part of paragraph 3 on page 7, I read, "It was possible, though, through similar influences on the Latvian auxiliary, to set in motion a pogrom against the Jews also in Riga. During this pogrom, all synagogues were destroyed and about 400 Jews were killed." Nazi ingenuity reached a new high mark with the construction and operation of the gas van as a means of mass annihilation of the Jews. A description of these vehicles of horror and death and the operation of them is fully set forth in captured top-secret document dated 16 May 1942, addressed to SS Obersturmbannführer Rauch, 8 Prince Albert Strasse, Berlin, from Dr. Becker, SS Untersturmführer. I offer this document 5:01 PS. U.S. Exhibit 288. I quote, "The overhauling of vans by Group D and C is finished. While the vans in the first series can also be put into action if the weather is not too bad, the vans of the second series, Sauer, stop completely in rainy weather. If it has rained, for instance, for only 1/2 hour, the vans cannot be used because it simply skids away. It can only be used in absolutely dry weather. It is only a question now whether the van can only be used standing at the place of execution. First, the van has to be brought to that place, which is possible only in good weather. The place of execution is usually 10 to 15 kilometers away from the highway and is difficult of access because of its location. In damp or wet weather, it is not accessible at all. If the person to be executed are driven or led to that place, then they realize immediately what is going on and get restless, which is to be avoided as far as possible. There is only one way left, to load them at the collecting point and to drive them to the spot. I ordered the vans of Group D to be camouflaged as house trailers by setting one set of window shutters on each side of the small van and 2 on each side of the larger vans, such as one often sees on farmhouses in the country. The vans became so well known that not only the authorities, but also the civilian population call the van Death Van as soon as one of the vehicles appeared. It is my opinion the van cannot be kept secret for any length of time, not even camouflaged." And then the 4th paragraph on this page, I read, "Because of the rough terrain and the indescribable road and highway conditions, the caulkings and rivets loosen in the course of time. I was asked if in such cases the vans should not be brought to Berlin for repair. Transportation to Berlin would be much too expensive and would demand too much fuel. In order to save these expenses, I ordered them to have smaller leaks soldered, and if that should no longer be possible, to notify Berlin immediately by radio that POL-NR is out of order. Besides that, I ordered that during application of gas, all the men were to be kept as far away from the vans as possible, so that they should not suffer damage to their health by the gas which eventually would escape. I should like to take this opportunity to bring the following to your attention. Several commands have had the unloading after the application of gas done by their own men. I brought to the attention of the commander of these SK concerns the immense psychological injuries and damages to their health which that work can have for those men, even if not immediately, at least later on. The men complained to me about headaches which appeared after each unloading. Nevertheless, they don't want to change the orders because they are afraid prisoners called for that work could use an opportune moment to flee. To protect the men from those damages, I request orders be issued accordingly. And on the next page, page 2, continues, the application of gas usually is not undertaken correctly. In order to come to an end as fast as possible, the driver presses the accelerator to the fullest extent. By doing that, the persons to be executed suffer death from suffocation and not death by dozing off as was planned. My directions now have proved that by correct adjustment of the levers, death comes faster and the prisoners fall asleep peacefully. Distorted faces and excretions, such as could be seen before, are no longer noticed. Today I shall continue my journey to Group B, where I can be reached with further news. Signed, Dr. Becker, SS Untersturmführer. On page 3, we find this document 501 PS. We find a letter signed by Hauptsturmführer Truey on the subject of S-vans. Addressed to the Reich Security Main Office, room 2D, 3A, Berlin. Marked top secret. This letter establishes that these vans were used for the annihilation of the Jews. I read this top secret message. Subject, S-vans. A transport of Jews, which has to be treated in a special way, arrives weekly at the office of the Commandant of the Security Police and the Security Service of White Ruthenia. The 3 S-vans which are there are not sufficient for that purpose. I request assignment of another S-van, 5 tons. At the same time, I request a shipment of 20 gas hoses for the 3 S-vans on hand, 2 diamond and 1 sour, since the ones on hand are leaky already. Signed, the Commandant of the Security Police and the Security Service, Ostland. It would appear from the documentary evidence that a certain amount of discord existed between the officials of the German government as to the proper means and methods used in connection with the program of extermination. A secret report dated 18 June 1943, addressed to Defendant Rosenberg, complained that 5,000 Jews killed by the police and SS might have been used for forced labor, and chided them for failing to bury the bodies of those liquidated. I offer in evidence this file, document R135, U.S. Exhibit 289.
isn't in these volumes, is it?
What is that, sir?
Is it in these volumes?
I think, sir, we found that in the assembly of the document books, in our case, it has been placed in front of R124.
Oh. Marshal, can anything be done to lower the heat here? Yes. Yes, go on.
I quote from the letter referred to, addressed to the Reich Minister for the occupied Eastern Territories. First paragraph of the translation. The fact that Jews receive special treatment requires no further discussion. However, it appears hardly believable that this was done in the way described in the report of the General Commissioner of 1 June 1943. What is Katyn against that? Imagine only that these occurrences would become known to the other side and exploited by them. Most likely, such propaganda would have no effect only because people who hear and read about it simply would not be ready to believe it. The last part of paragraph 3 on this page reads, "To lock men, women, and children into bonds and to set fire to them does not appear to be a suitable method for combating bands, even if it is desired to exterminate the population. This method is not worthy of the German cause and hurts our reputation severely." Gunther, the prison warden at Minsk, in a letter dated 31 May 1943, addressed to the General Commissioner for White Ruthenia, subject Action Against Jews, was critical by implication. With the court's permission, I would like to read this entire letter, part of document R135, page 5. Subject, Action Against Jews. On 13 April 1943, the former German dentist Ernst Israel Techauer and his wife Eliza Sarah Techauer, née Rosenthal, were committed to the court prison by the security service. Since that time, all German and Russian Jews who were turned over to us had their golden bridgework, crowns, and fillings pulled or broken out. This happens always 1 to 2 hours before the respective action. Since 13 April 1943, 516 German and Russian Jews have been finished off. On the basis of a definite investigation, gold was taken only in 2 actions. On 14 April 1943 from 172, and on 27 April 1943 from 164 Jews. About 50% of the Jews had gold teeth, bridgework, or fillings. Hauptscharführer Rube of the security service was always personally present, and he took the gold along too. Before 13 April 1943, this was not done. Signed, Gunther, prison warden. This letter was forwarded to the defendant Rosenberg as Reich Minister for the occupied Eastern Territory on 1 June 1943. I will read the covering letter, part of document R-135. Page 4. To the Reich Minister of the occupied Eastern Territories, Berlin. To the Reich Commissioner for the Eastland, Riga. Subject, action against Jews in the prison of Minsk. The enclosed official report from the warden of the prison in Minsk is submitted to the Reich Minister and the Reich Commissar for information. Signed, the General Commissar in Minsk. Yes, sir, we so interpret. The court will recall that the reading of the use of the gas vans ties in very closely with the second letter of the transports of the Jews arriving for that purpose.
File.
I am so informed, sir. Further complaint is contained in a secret letter addressed to General of the Infantry Thomas, Chief of the Industrial Armament Department, dated 2 December 1941. It might be noted with interest that the apprehensive writer of this letter stated that he did not forward the communications through official channels. I offer in evidence captured document 2357 PS, 3257 PS, and I quote from the first paragraph through. This is, what is the 290 U.S. For the personal information of the Chief of the Industrial Armament Department, I am forwarding a total account of the present situation in the Reich Commissariat, Ukraine, in which the difficulties and tensions encountered so far and the problems which give rise to serious anxiety are stated with unmistakable clarity. Intentionally, I have desisted from submitting such a report through official channels or to make it known to other departments interested in it, because I do not expect any results that way, but to the contrary, am apprehensive that the difficulties and tensions and also the divergent opinions might only be increased due to the peculiarity of the situation. Jewish problems. Paragraph 7, page 1. Regulations of the Jewish question in the Ukraine was a difficult problem because that the Jews constituted a large part of the urban population. We therefore had to deal, just as in the general government, with a mass problem of policy concerning the population. Many cities had a percentage of Jews exceeding 50%. Only the rich Jews had fled from the German troops. The majority of Jews remained under German administration. The latter found the problem more complicated through the fact that these Jews represented almost the entire trade and even a part of the manpower in small and medium industries, besides the business which had in part become superfluous as a direct or indirect result of the war. The elimination, therefore, necessarily had far-reaching economic consequences and even direct consequences for the armament industry, production for supplying troops. Paragraph 1 on page 2 continues. The attitude of the Jewish population was anxious, obliging from the beginning. They tried to avoid everything that might displease the German administration. That they hated the German administration and army inwardly goes without saying and cannot be surprising. However, there is no proof that Jewry as a whole, or even to a greater part, was implicated in acts of sabotage. Surely there were some terrorists or saboteurs among them, just as among the Ukrainians. But it cannot be said that the Jews, as such, represented a danger to the German armed forces. The output produced by Jews, who, of course, were prompted by nothing but feeling of fear, was satisfactory to the troops and the German administration. The Jewish population remained temporarily unmolested shortly after the fighting. Only weeks, sometimes months later, specially detached formations of the police executed a planned shooting of Jews. This action, as a rule, proceeded from east to west. It was done entirely in public with the use of the Ukrainian militia, and unfortunately, in many instances also, with members of the armed forces taking part voluntarily. The way these actions, which included men and old men, women and children of all ages, was carried out was horrible. The great masses executed make this action more gigantic than any similar measure taken so far in the Soviet Union. So far, about 150,000 to 200,000 Jews may have been executed in the part of the Ukraine belonging to the Rights Commissariat. No consideration was given to the interest of economy. Summarizing, it can be said that the kind of solution of the Jewish problem applied to the Ukraine, which obviously was based on the ideological theories, as a matter of principle, had the following results. A, the elimination of a part of partly superfluous eaters in the cities. B, the elimination of a part of the population which hated us, undoubtedly. C, the elimination of badly needed tradesmen who were in many instances indispensable even in the interest of the armed forces. D, consequences as to foreign policy, propaganda which are obvious. E, bad effects on the troops, which in any case get indirect contact with the execution. F, brutalizing effect on the formations which carried out the executions, regular police. End of the quotation. Unless the court be persuaded to the belief that these conditions related existed only in the East, I invite attention to the official Netherlands government report by the Commissioner for Repatriation as indicative as to the treatment of the Jews in the West. This document is a recital of the German measures taken in the Netherlands against the Dutch Jews. The decrees, the anti-Semitic demonstrations, the burning of synagogues, the purging of Jews from the economic life of their country, the food restrictions against them, forced labor, concentration camp confinement, deportation, and death all follow the same pattern that was effected throughout Nazi-occupied Europe. I now refer to document 1726 PS, U.S. Exhibit 195, already in evidence. It is not intended to read this document in evidence, but it is deemed important to invite the court's attention to that portion of the report relating to the deportation of Dutch Jews shown on page 5 of the translation. From there, the court will note that full Jews, being liable to deportation, number 140,000. Court will also note that the total number of deportees was 117,000, representing more than 83% of all the Jews in the Netherlands. Of these, 115,000 were deported to Poland as slave labor, according to the Netherlands report. And after departure, all trace of them were lost. Regardless of victory or defeat to Germany, the Jew was doomed. It was the expressed intent of the Nazi state that whatever the German fate might be, the Jew would not survive. I offer in evidence document L53, stamped top secret, U.S. Exhibit 291. This message is from the Commandant of the SIPO and SD for the Radom District, addressed to SS Hauptsturmführer Thiel on the subject clearance of prisons. I read the body of this message. I again stress the fact that the number of inmates of the SIPO and SD prisons must be kept as low as possible. In the present situation, particularly those suspects handed over by the civil police, need only be subjected to a short formal interrogation, provided there are no serious grounds for suspicion. They are then to be sent by the quickest route to a concentration camp, should no court-martial proceedings be necessary, or should there be no question of discharge. Please keep the number of discharges very low. Should the situation at the front necessitate it, early preparations are to be made for the total clearance of prisons. Should the situation develop suddenly in such a way that it is impossible to evacuate the prisoners, the prison inmates are to be liquidated and their bodies disposed of as far as possible, burning, blowing up the building, etc. If necessary, Jews still employed in the armament industry or on other work are to be dealt with in the same way. The liberation of prisoners or Jews by the enemy, be it the WB or the Red Army, must be avoided under all circumstances, nor may they fall into their hands alive.
What is the WB? What is the WB?
I have inquired about the WB, Your Honor, from several sources and have not found a understanding or a statement of it. Perhaps before the afternoon session I may be able to enlighten the court. I have not yet been able to find out, sir.
And where was the document found?
A captured document, sir.
Does it relate to prisoners of war, can you say?
No, sir. It's including therein, of course, prisoners of war as well as all Jews. The history of the document, sir, I'll try to gather for the court's information.
Yes, about the... Did you tell us what the CPO were?
Yes, sir. I could furnish the court with that. That is the security police, sir. This presentation, if the court please, would be incomplete without incorporating herein reference to concentration camps insofar as they relate to the hundreds of thousands, millions of Jews who died by mass shooting, gas, poison, starvation, and other means. The subject of concentration camps and all its horrors was shown to this tribunal not only in the motion picture film, but by the most able presentation of Mr. Dodd yesterday. And it is not intended at this time to refer to the camps only insofar as they relate to the part they played in the annihilation of the Jewish people. For example, in the camp at Auschwitz, during July 1944, Jews were killed at the rate of 12,000 daily. This information is contained in a document L-161, U.S. Exhibit 292. Document L-61 is an official Polish report on Auschwitz concentration camp, dated 31 May 1945. I have taken a short excerpt from this report on the original marked...
I think you made a mistake, didn't you? It's not a Polish war report. It's the British War Office report. Unless it's mistake.
I understand, sir, that it was compiled originally by the Polish government and perhaps distributed
oh, I see. This
from London.
Very well.
I quote, during July 1944, they were being liquidated at the rate of 12,000 Hungarian Jews daily. And as the crematoria could not deal with such numbers, many bodies were thrown into large pits and covered with quicklime. End of quotation. I offer in evidence document 3311 PS. U.S. Exhibit 293. This is an official Polish government commission report on the investigation of German crimes in Poland. The document describes the concentration camp at Treblinka. From page 1, paragraph 3 and 4, I read as follows. In March 1942, the Germans began to erect another camp, Treblinka B, in the neighborhood of Treblinka A, intended to become a place of torment for Jews. The erection of this camp was closely connected with the German plans aimed at a complete destruction of the Jewish population in Poland, which necessitated the creation of a machinery by means of which the Polish Jews could be killed in large numbers. Late in April 1942, the erection of the first 3 chambers was finished, in which these general massacres were to be performed by means of steam. Somewhat later, the erection of the real death building was finished, which contained 10 death chambers. It was opened for wholesale murder early in autumn 1942. And on page 3 of this report, beginning with the second paragraph, the Polish Commission describes graphically the procedure for the extermination within the camp. The average number of Jews dealt with at the camp in the summer of 1942 was about 2 railway transports daily, but there were days of much higher efficiency. From autumn 1942, this number was falling. After unloading in the siding, all victims were assembled in one place where men were first separated from women and children. In the first days of the existence of the camp, the victims were made to believe that after a short stay in the camp, necessary for bathing and disinfection, they would be sent farther east for work. Explanation of this sort was given by SS men who assisted at the unloading of the transports, and further explanations could be read in notices stuck up on the walls of the barracks. But later, when more transports had to be dealt with, the Germans dropped all pretenses and only tried to accelerate the procedure. All victims had to strip off their clothes and shoes, which were collected afterwards, whereupon all victims, women and children first, were driven into the death chambers. Those too slow or too weak to move quickly were driven in by rifle butts, by whipping and kicking, often by Sauer himself. Many slipped and fell. The next victims pressed forward and stumbled over them. Small children were simply thrown inside. After being filled up to capacity, the chambers were hermetically sealed or closed, and steam was let in. In a few minutes, all was over. The Jewish menial workers had to remove the bodies from the platform and to bury them in mass graves. By and by, as new transports arrived, the cemetery grew, extending in eastern direction. From reports received, it may be assumed that several hundred thousands of Jews have been exterminated in Treblinka. I now offer in evidence document identified by number L22, U.S. Exhibit 294. This official United States government report, issued by the Executive Office of the President of the United States, War Refugee Board, on the German camp at Auschwitz and Birkenau, dated 1924. On page 33 of this report is set forth the number of Jews gassed in Birkenau in the 2-year period between April 1942 and April 1944. I have been assured that the figure printed in this report is not a typographical error. The number shown, 1,765,000. I would now like to turn to the German bookkeeping and statistics for Enlightenment on the extermination of Jews in Poland. Referring again to the diary of Hans Frank, already in evidence, document 2233D, PS, U.S. Exhibit 281, I read briefly from the beginning of the 4th paragraph on page 1. The Jews, for us, also represent extraordinarily malignant gluttons. We have now approximately 2,500,000 of them in the general government.
Major Walsh, you have read this already yourself.
Yes, sir. That is true. I just want to make reference to it again, sir, for the comparison with other figures.
Very well.
Perhaps with the Jewish mixtures and everything that goes with it, 3,500,000 Jews. Now these figures, if the court please, was as of 16 December 1941. And I now wish to turn to 25 January 1944, 3 years and 1 month later, and make reference to another excerpt from Frank's diary, 2233F, loose leaf volume, U.S. Exhibit 295. This volume covers a period from 1 January 1944 to 28 February 1944, page 5 of the original. And to our excerpt, contained on page 2233F, PS, I read, as a quotation from the diary, "At the present time, we still have in the general government perhaps 100,000 Jews. In this period of 3 years, according to the records of the then Governor General of occupied Poland, between 2,400,000 and 3,400,000 Jews had been eliminated. Prosecution could offer this tribunal a wealth of evidence on the total number of Jews who have died by Nazi hands. But it is believed that cumulative evidence would not vary the guilt of these defendants. I do wish, however, to offer one document, a statement, to establish the deaths of 4 million Jews in camps and deaths of 2 million Jews by the state police in the East, making a total of 6 million. Document 2738 PS, U.S. Exhibit 296. This is a statement of Adolf Eichmann, chief of the Jewish section of the Gestapo, as the source of the figures quoted, made to Dr. Wilhelm Hodel, deputy group leader of the foreign section of the security section, AMT 6 of the RSHA. Dr. Wilhelm Hodel, in affidavit form, made the following statement, and I quote from page 2. Approximately 4 million Jews had been killed in the various concentration camps, while an additional 2 million met death in other ways, the major part of which were shot by operational squads of the security police during the campaign against Russia. May I, in conclusion, emphasize that the captured documents and evidence are almost without exception from the official sources of the
Major Walsh,
Nazi Party. Yes, sir.
you've only read that one statement, but where does the person who made the affidavit get his information from?
I shall be pleased to read that in there, sir. I made a statement of Eichmann as being the source of the information given to Dr. Wilhelm Hodel, one of his assistants. And on page 1, it says that according to my knowledge, Eichmann was, at that time, the leader of the Jewish section of the Gestapo. And in addition, that he had been ordered by Himmler to get a hold of the Jews in all the European countries and to transport them to Germany. Eichmann was then very much impressed with the fact that Romania had withdrawn from the war in those days. Moreover, he had come to me to get information about the military situation, which I received daily from the Hungarian Ministry of War and from the commander of the Waffen-SS in Hungary. He expressed his conviction that Germany had now lost the war and that he personally had no further chance. He knew that he would be considered one of the main war criminals by the United Nations, since he had millions of Jewish lives on his conscience. I asked him how many that was, to which he answered that although the number was a great Reich secret, he would tell me, since I, as a historian, would be interested, and that he would probably not return anyhow to his command in Romania. He had shortly before that made a report to Himmler, as the latter wanted to know the exact number of Jews who had been killed. And it was on the basis of this information, sir, that I had read the following quotation.
The tribunal will adjourn now.
During the morning session, the court requested certain information concerning documents that had been offered and accepted in evidence. I refer to document 10. I refer to document 1061, the report, "The Warsaw Ghetto is no more." This report, I am told, was prepared for presentation at a meeting of the SS police leaders to be held on 18 May 1943. That is indicated on page 45 of the translation before the court. This document was captured by the 7th United States Army and delivered by them to the G2 of the United States forces in the European theater. In turn, they were delivered to Colonel Story of the United States prosecutor staff some months ago. The court also inquired...
Major Walsh, I think
Yes,
the tribunal also wished to know whether you could tell us to whom the report had been made.
The reports are according to the teletypes. The daily teletypes, sir, were addressed to the higher SS and Police Führer East, SS Obergruppenführer, and General of the Police, Kruger, or his deputy.
Thank you.
The court further inquired about document L53, and I have obtained some information concerning this document. This document was captured by T-Force of the Counterintelligence Corps Detachment, number 220, found among the German records at Weimar, Germany, sometime prior to 10 May 1945.
L53, you said, didn't you?
L53, yes. And the court further inquired concerning this document the meaning of the letters WB. I regret that I have been unable to obtain definite information as to the meaning of WB, but it has been suggested to me that it might mean Westbund or Western Allies, because it is used in connection with the capture, the destruction of all prisoners before capture by either the WB or the Red Armies, and I presume that it may mean Westbund. The slaughters of the Jews in Europe cannot be expressed in figures alone. For the impact of this slaughter is even more tragic to the future of the Jewish people and mankind. Ancient Jewish communities, with their own rich spiritual, cultural, and economic life, bound up for centuries with the life of the nations in which they flourished, have been completely obliterated. The contribution of the Jewish people to civilization, the arts, the sciences, industry and culture, need not, I am sure, be elaborated upon before this tribunal. Their destruction, carried out continuously, deliberately, intentionally, and methodically by the Nazis, represents a loss to civilization of special qualities and abilities that cannot possibly be recouped. I have not attempted to recount the multitudinous and diabolical crimes committed against the Jewish people by the state which these defendants ruled, because with sober regard for contemporary and historical truth, a detailed description of some of the crimes would transcend the utmost reaches of the human faculty of expression. The mind already recoils and shrinks from the acceptance of the incredible facts already related. Rather, it is my purpose to elucidate the pattern, the successful and successive stages, the sequence and concurrence of the crimes committed, the predetermined means to a preordained end. Yet these cold, stark, brutal facts and figures, drawn largely from the defendant's own sources and submitted in evidence before this tribunal, defy rebuttal. From conception to execution, from party program of 1920 to the gloating declarations of Himmler and the defendant Frank in 1943 and 1944, the annihilation of the Jewish people in Europe was man-made, made by the very men sitting in the defendant's box, brought to just judgment before this tribunal. Before closing, may I acknowledge with appreciation the untiring services and the staff of the United States prosecution, through whose painstaking search and analysis and study this presentation of evidence was made possible. Captain Seymour Krieger and Lieutenant Brady Bryson, Lieutenant Frederick Felton, Sergeant Isaac Stone, and Mr. Hans Nathan.